Joe, how do we dismantle this nonsense about everything being attributed to global warming and carbon dioxide?
Alan, we just keep speaking the truth. We keep digging through history and keep reminding everyone that Australia is the land of flooding, rain and drought, isn't it? And it's always been that way. We look at 178 years of rainfall records and find no trend thanks to CO2, and that's Ashcroft et al. 2019. I mean, these are their scientists. We look at what Professor Andy Pittman said, that actually drought isn't a guaranteed a priori thing when it comes to climate change. So drier seasons are not a guaranteed factor of climate change, because when we heat the world, if that is happening, then we would see more water coming off the oceans, evaporating. We would have more humidity. With what goes up must come down, which means more rain. So everything about this comes back to the fact there are three things you need for fire: fuel, oxygen, and a spark. Notice I didn't say temperature. Temperature is such a minor factor. Fuel is the only factor we can control. You know, obviously we haven't got the budget to get rid of air and lightning, so fuel is it. And we've got almost barrels of oil left out there unguarded in the forest, pretending that this is not a fire hazard, that we don't need to deal with the fuel load of the scrub and the trees and the bushes and whatnot. And it just, it's extraordinary. We've known for years, for decades. I told
my viewers you'll get a dose of common sense from this lady. Highly intelligent, well-educated. See, Joe, Labor governments are addicted to creating national parks. We have more national parks than any other country in the world, about 670. Queensland has 237. New South Wales has 235. But the management of these parks is a shambles. Not only can't you get into them, but the fire trails are so overgrown that you can't gain access. So, Joe, it's your point. There is fuel everywhere. Surely that's the problem which the Greens and their Labor mates don't want to face.
Absolutely. And the fuel that creates the intensity of these fires, it's exponential. You get 10 times as much fuel, you get 100 times the intensity of the fire. It is so much bigger when worse than small manageable fires, and it is beyond our ability to control when we leave all this scrub and undergrowth. And I guess we go back to even, the Indigenous Aboriginal people knew how to control this. They'd light lots of cool fires,
they had
cool
the burn-offs. Indigenous Australians had the
We've
burn-offs.
known for years.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've known for thousands of years.
That's the one thing we can learn from Aboriginal Australians. The one thing we can learn from Aboriginal Australians. They stayed safe by burning off. You also say correctly that droughts haven't got worse, and that droughts, of course, dry out the ground. I think you made this point earlier. And the fuel, dry out the ground, the fuel. But how reliable, therefore, are these climate models?
Well, climate models on a water planet can't predict water. So that means they can't predict rainfall. They all disagree on where the patches of rain are going to get worse or better. So someone will always be able to say, oh, that model was right. Which model is right? It's different every year. So we don't have models that can predict the rain years in advance. We can't predict El Niños more than a few months in advance. And even then, we don't necessarily get it right. Now, because we don't understand the driving forces behind the El Niño-La Niña oscillation, we can't predict next year's season. We can't tell you the farmers whether this is what we would look like if we had climate models at work. They would be saying, looking 2 years out, we'd be able to tell you that season's going to be good for these kind of crops and this sort of rain. And we can't do that. We have no chance of predicting the water. And we also can't predict the winds. For years they talked about global stilling, the fact that the winds would slow down. Well, then the winds sped up, and what do you know? They predicted that climate change would cause windier days.